All right, welcome all. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is part of the technical webinar series covering MnDOT Aeronautics M&O grants with updates on eligibility and reimbursement processes. We'll have future webinars in this series coming later this winter, leading up to the Minnesota Airports Conference. Just a little bit here about AirTAP. My name is Natalie Niskanen. I'm a senior program coordinator with AirTAP, and AirTAP helps Minnesota's public and private sector airport professionals improve the safety, quality, and efficiency of airport operations and increases the use of new navigation materials, practices, and technology. And we have training opportunities, including the annual Airports Conference, an annual webinar series, several annual webinar series, in fact, and an annual wildlife hazard control workshop. And then we also have electronic newsletters and print newsletters covering airport management and related content relevant to all Minnesota airports, large and small. Quick teaser here for this week. We have an upcoming Minnesota Electric Aviation Network webinar on October 16th, this Thursday, with following dates on November 20th and December 18th. And we do have recording online for the previous webinar. You can follow the QR code there, go to the AirTAP website to find that. And then just letting you know that we have planning underway for the next year's Airports Conference in Nisswa at Grandview Lodge, April 22 to 24. And we are looking for your opinion. If you have 2 minutes, we would love for you to just take our quick survey on conference topics to let us know what you want to see at this year's conference. And I will also send this out after today's webinar in our follow-up email. And then we would also love some feedback from you all, what you thought about this webinar and any feedback or suggestions for future webinars. And then just some housekeeping here for today. We're going to be utilizing the chat. If you have questions for Arika, please put those in the chat, and then there will be some time at the end to go over all of those. And then with that, I'll hand things over to Arika Johnson with the Airport Development Section. She is the supervisor there in the Office of Aeronautics. Let me see where my stop share is. There we go.
Thank you, Natalie. I am just bringing open my, why is it? There we go. Let me know. Can you see this, Natalie?
I'm not seeing it yet.
Okay, hold on. I think I accidentally pressed the wrong. Let me see. Let's try this again. All right. How about now?
I'm seeing your slides, not
present
or not.
There we go.
There we go. Perfect.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. It was great to see how many participants have signed up for this. And we're glad that everybody wants to jump in and learn about some of our updates that we have to our M&O program. Many of this is just some key changing, some eligibility changes and the submittal requirements with our new grant policies. Again, as Natalie stated, I'm Arika Johnson. I'm over our airport development section, which includes our M&O grants and as well as any capital grants, whether you get those through the state or the FAA. So kind of the purpose of today in this webinar is to talk about how we're supporting our airports with these maintenance and operations costs. We are trying to provide some clear guidelines for eligibility and reimbursements, and then ensuring that there's consistent documentation and compliance in place for these M&O reimbursement requests. So some key changes to the M&O program, as some of you probably have looked at the grant agreements that have been coming through. And again, apologize that those are coming in a little later than normal, but rest assured, money's been set aside and incurred. There's going to be no issues with you submitting reimbursements after July 1st. But one of the some of the key changes we have is, one, our on-time submittals. Some quarterly deadlines. We are going to start sticking to those more closely. And then there's also a more strict deadline for getting your costs in for the fiscal year, as we'll talk about later in the presentation. Kind of how grant monitoring visits, if you are receiving more than $25,000 within a fiscal year. So your grant for the biennium is over 50,000. We will be asking questions and visiting you as a grant monitoring visit at least once every 2 years now. Also, there's a new submittal form that will be coming, and this will be used until, as a lot of people have heard, Black Cat is coming our way, and that'll be talked about later today. And then also some updated eligibility lists. We've added some items, we've also adjusted and removed some items based off of some risk analysis from our audit department. So first, talking about reimbursement deadlines. So we still have the same reimbursement windows, but we are, because of grant policies, we are sticking more closely to those. Q1, because the grant agreements went out a little later, we will give you some leeway to submit. So if you don't think you can get them in by November 15th, please email Jenny Bonneman so she can track that, or myself, for this first quarter submittal. But as you can see, for expenses incurred from July through September, that Q1 submittal needs to be between October 1st and November 15th. And then same goes for October through December expenses incurred. Those need to be submitted between January 1st and February 15th, as well as January through March and April and through June, as you can see on the slides, between April 1st and May 15th, and then also July 1st through August 15th. Now, one thing that is new to the grant agreement this year and is being imposed to help better manage our finances and make sure that grants are being paid out and closed out in a timely fashion is there's going to be a deadline of December 31st for any, if you asked for extensions, we cannot go past that December 31st deadline. So not saying that you can submit everything before December 31st. You still need to submit in the quarter that you're submitting. But if you need an extension and ask Jenny for an extension to submit your cost, the latest you can submit them is December 31st. If you do not submit them by December 31st of that year, so for instance, this fiscal year 25, or 26 that we are now, excuse me, fiscal year 26, if you get an extension from Jenny to submit your M&O reimbursements, if you don't submit them by December 31st of 2026, the remaining funds will go back into the state airports fund for other uses. We're trying to make sure that our funding is squared away, and we've been requested by both the grants office and by chief counsel to make sure that we have set deadlines for when submittals need to be in. Next is about grant monitoring visits. As some of you have probably met a few of our engineering specialists that have been coming out and visiting, Hans in the north, Travis in the central, and then Brian in the south. We have been increasing our grant monitoring visits. Those are now a requirement under our grant policies with the state. But it's just a good way to come out and visit you guys and kind of get to know who's involved at the airport, listen to your concerns, things that maybe we can help out with. And then also, give you some guidance on, hey, if you're having these issues, maybe a grant you can apply for, or if there's other, information that's needed to help out. So kind of the purpose of these grant monitoring visits is, one, to review. So we're reviewing the airport property when it comes to M&O. We want to make sure, like, hey, your grounds look like they're being taken care of, snow removal is being done, the AD building's being upkept. If some of those things aren't, look amiss, we might have questions on, hey, like, making sure you're using that maintenance operations money to upkeep that airport so it's a safe flying for all air traveling public. Next, we're verifying that any grant funded equipment is present at the airport and in use. So any of the grants that have been purchased by the state, or, with a grant, I should say, issued by the state, we are just making sure, and we're doing some asset monitoring as stated in all grant agreements since we've had that language and have bought grants. So we're just verifying that they're still there, and if they're stored off property, that is okay. It is not a requirement that they store it on airport. We would rather it be that, but if you don't have a good place to store it, it's okay if there's, a city place that you're storing that piece of equipment at, but just know that it cannot be used on property for the city other than the airport. And then also we're ensuring that the documentation of any employee that's doing maintenance activities is properly maintained. And this is more for if you're using city workers to mow the grass, plow, do any type of maintenance or operations at the airport. Now, if you have a contract with an FBO to plow your runways or mow the grass and they invoice you for that, this is not something that you need to maintain your time cards for. That's an invoice that's verifiable, and that's what you would be submitting, and we'll talk about that later. Next, there is a new submittal form which I can show a little bit more in detail at the end of the webinar here, but as you can see, I'm sorry it's a little small, but this will be a form that you submit every expense onto, and we have to have one form, and then it'll add up and summarize on the head page, similar to what's been before. But there's going to be a drop-down list, and so each drop-down is the expenses you'll see, similar to what we've seen in the past. Just trying to do. So here's that type. So you'd click that. You can select maintenance, janitorial, security, insurance. Select that. Then you're going to do a date expense was incurred, which is the date that work actually occurred or when the invoice was dated. Then you're having a check, warrant, or EFT number. So this is just to know when we're looking at for financial reconciliation, when we're looking at your ledgers, that we can pick out what number that check was written, anything like that. So it's easy to verify. Next, we'll have a description of the expense or the equipment used. So, plow with whatever piece of equipment using, or utility for AD building January 2026. So having enough description in there that we can pick out the invoice and make sure that it's verified that it's an eligible expense. These two next columns are only for if you're claiming hours worked by a city employee as maintenance costs. So documented hours. So if you have a city employee going over and mowing and they mowed 30 hours in the month of July, you would put 30 hours here, their hourly wage. Or if you're renting a piece of equipment to mow, you put the amount of hours and then the rental unit rate here. And then you'll have to put the amount in here for what is the total amount that you're claiming. So if they did 20 hours at $10 an hour, you'd put $200 here. So you would fill out each line for each each eligible expense, and then you'd attach the proof of work, which is an invoice, time card, or payroll, something that shows like, hey, this is how we came up with the charged hours that we did. If it's a logbook, that kind of thing. And then also the proof of payment, whether that's, a check that you take out or you have a financial report from your city's finance program, and you can highlight like, oh, here's where we paid, the FBO that month, and it was in that check. Annual expenses. This is a new thing. Any annual expenses like insurance. So if you get insurance through the League of Minnesota Cities, that can be submitted once. You do not need to submit that anymore quarterly. I know that was what it was in the past, but this year, so if you get charged, $5,000 for insurance for the year for the airport, you can submit that right away in whatever month you get charged for it. And even if it goes into the next fiscal year, you can charge it once yearly. Some documentation examples, as I was saying, for the different types of eligible expenses. So for employee maintenance time, if you have a time card that shows how many hours they worked and it's situated where you can see airport time, you have a payroll document to show that this is how many, or a logbook. If you have a logbook that you sign off on that shows like this is the hours they worked, having that so that we can show how you came up with the hours um, will be a good piece of document that we can use. Audit, highlighting the airport share listed on the invoice. Any insurance, again, invoice with the airport cost highlighted. Utilities and telephone. This includes now internet is a new one that is now eligible. If you have internet at your airport that you pay for, that can now be submitted. If it's a public open for pilots to use, that can now be submitted as a eligible expense. When you submit those utilities, especially for utilities, please make sure on the invoice that the service location is noted. We should be putting, like this is serving the AD building or this is serving the NAVAID so that we can verify that that's an eligible expense. Lastly, security or janitorial. I know sometimes people use if it's police that's coming out in a city, that might be again a logbook or a time card. But if you're just if you have like a local security firm, or if they can invoice you for the time that they're doing, that would make it easier for us to verify that's an eligible expense. So a little bit more into detail of what's changed for updated eligibility. Again, what's eligible? Maintenance, janitorial on the AD building, utilities, training, audits, insurance, fuel, trash, security, service contracts. Now, this is something that's changed slightly. So service contracts, if you send off and something needs to be worked on, or if it's being worked on by like your city maintenance thing, and if they can invoice, we can include equipment work and parts if it's larger. Now minor parts now has been moved where that isn't an eligible expense. So if you're buying a small like door handle for a door, or you're fixing a city hanger and you change a light bulb out, that is no longer an eligible expense. As our grants unit has deemed those the risk too high to be able to verify that those small parts, supplies, and tools are actually being used at the airport. Anything larger though, like again, if you have a maintenance truck and you go and the tire blows on it, that could possibly be an eligible expense if you go and take it and change out the truck tire and it shows that it was for the maintenance truck. Or if something goes off on the any of your snowplow equipment and you have to have it worked on, we can include those as a part of a service contract. Ineligible, again, is admin office labor, advertising, capital improvements, furniture, landscaping, uniforms, membership, any aircraft de-icing, non-maintenance vehicle expenses, and then minor parts, supplies, and tools. Now there is a more detailed list on our website under the grant eligibility guidance document. If you go to our funding and grants page, it's on the right-hand side, and I'll show it again at the end of this webinar where you can find that. And there is a section on maintenance and operations, which gives a little bit more detail on what can be ineligible, what's eligible and what's ineligible, and how to tell the difference with those. So again, some key reminders. Make sure you're submitting on time. If you're asking for extensions, there's no reimbursements after the December 31st deadline. So if you don't get it in by December 31st, that funding will go back to the state airports fund. So please make sure you're getting in those last expenses. If you worked with Jenny to extend it, please make sure you're getting those in by December 31st. Make sure you're providing the correct documentation for each expense, making sure that it's clearly labeled if it's an invoice, what the cost was for, and making sure that it's easily identifiable that expense is eligible. And then also a final reminder, if you have not, please send in your risk assessment. We cannot process your grant until that risk assessment's sent out. If you have not received the link to do the risk assessment for your airport, please let me know and I can resend that to those who have not gotten it. It was a simple form stack online. So you just click a button, answer a few questions that we, last time we sent it out was 2 years ago. And this is just updating to make sure that we know what you're at for, as far as the, some of these questions in regards to having the adequate staff, having somewhere that you can track time, and also if you've had any audit findings. So nothing different than what we've done in the past, just trying to make it easier on a form stack. And then I'll quick here show, I'm gonna back out here. Let me see if people can see this still. Natalie, no, you cannot see that. Hold on. I'm gonna stop sharing here. I'm gonna share again. And go over quick. So we will be sending out, all right, M&O, this is going to be a one pager that gets sent out along with a link to the webinar here. This will be also on our Facebook page, on our website. And this is a step-by-step on how to submit an M&O reimbursement request, trying to make it a little bit easier. And again, feel free to reach out to myself or Jenny Bonneman with questions. Give us a few days, especially right after this grant, to make sure that we know, what your, that we can answer all the questions in a timely manner. But this talks about, one, gathering your documentation, examples of source documentation, meaning like the proof that you actually have a eligible cost, and then the proof of payment, like a financial report, general ledger, activity report. Next is completing the reimbursement form, kind of talks about each of the fields and what you need to put in there. Lastly, kind of organizing and reviewing, making sure you're arranging that supporting documents in the same order as listed on the form. So that makes it a whole lot easier for Jenny to review all those questions or all those invoices, is if you put them in order that you are putting the documentation in. Double check that all the calculations are matching up, ensure your match is supporting, that you have the supporting materials, and then confirm that the expenses are eligible costs and that everything adds up. Lastly, submit that request to the airport maintenance and operations email or Jenny. And if you have any questions, again, contact Jenny Bonneman. Give her at least 3 business days before you reply again, to give her time to answer and gather the information to help you out. And then lastly, was going to quick share the new reimbursement form here and just kind of show you what that's looking like. So again, you can see, I know it's probably a little small for some people, but you can click on what you're looking for, date, select the date it was incurred, check number 1001, mowing, and then documented hours would be, 5 hours at $10 an hour. And hold on, I can't see this. And then it comes up as 50, and it'll summarize at the bottom as well. Make sure you're filling out this information on top, and then the second page, we will have it so it summarizes here. And it'll come in the total amount that you put on the other page, and then 75% is what everybody gets for the state share amount. And then a new feature on these, you can actually, it does not require you to get it notarized, so just a signature and date, and you do not need special Adobe program for this. This can be used in Adobe Reader. And then there's also a link to our funding eligibility and guidance page. So if you click on that, oh, good, share a new screen here. And then it should go to, I can't see it right now, but to our funding and grants page, and then the funding eligibility and guidance. Actually, I think it just downloaded it, to tell you the truth. So it'll download it as a grant, but this is our funding eligibility guidance. And this will go, as you can see, there's everything for our grants, but on page 7 is the maintenance and operations. If you go down to maintenance and operations, here's the start of it, but this will give you even more ineligible and eligible items. And again, you can talk or reach out to us if you have any question on this as well. But this is on our website again. If it doesn't download automatically for you, you can go right to the Aero homepage, and under airports, go to funding and grants, and everything is right over here. And this new form will be on the forms page, and then we're updating here too as well the M&O page, which right now it's under construction, but that'll be done. So I will end that there. And I know I saw questions popping up.
Erica, do you want to take those or?
Yes, I can. I will.
Okay. While you're doing that, there's been a couple questions about whether we can make these presentation slides available. Can we send those out to folks with the webinar link and everything?
Yes, that will be along with the webinar, and then we'll also put that up on our website. Once we get that M&O page, it will be up on there.
Awesome, thank you.
I'll go down the list here. Joe Hedrick asked, will grant monitoring visits be, and I'll share my last slide here. Maybe not. Will grant monitoring visits be combined with construction grant or equipment grant monitoring visits? Yes. Answer to that question is yes. We will, our engineering specialists will be asking some questions regarding M&O while they're there. If you've had a visit already, you've probably gotten the questions about the time cards and and different things, and making sure where the equipment is, and or just checking out the airport, doing a visit of making sure that everything's being upkept. Yes, Belinda will make the PowerPoint printable. And we will have this, and then looks like Melissa asked about record for future reference. Yes, on the AirTAP website, there will be links to this webinar and also past ones. I know we had another one back about 2 years ago that I did in regards to the like state capital grants, and kind of how the best thing to make sure your grant scores well, or your project scores well. I can actually, I think I have that here. I can share that so you guys can see where that is. All right. All right, so if you're here on the AirTAP website, there is links to it on our website as well, but workshops under training and events, workshops and webinars. And so you can go and see archived events, and this will have access to everything in the past few years. So there's some winter technical webinar series from earlier, like for instance, from 2 years ago, I think there was this, and right here was one I did a few years ago. But you can go and see all these different ones that we have done in the past, and it's a really good way to kind of catch up if you had any questions and see if there's anything that you can learn from previous grants. And go back to, let's see, now I lost my place in here. Here we go. When Carla asked, when you say date incurred, do you mean date it was paid or date the expense happened? Example, I bought a part 9/5 but didn't pay until 10/2. The date incurred is the date that you bought the part or the work was incurred or you were invoiced. So if you're invoiced for the utility on 10/1 and then you pay it on 10/20, the date incurred means 10/1, the date you were invoiced. Oh, Natalie already answered Melissa. Thanks, Natalie. I think it's Michelle. Are you saying we will have to manually put in each invoice instead of the total for each category? Yes, you will have to put in each invoice that you are claiming. So if you have 10 utility invoices that you're claiming, you will have to put in each utility invoice into the form, but that will total on that final page. So you won't have to do the totaling. It'll total up on that page for all the utilities that you have. Karen asked, are we still able to print a report from our financial software that shows all this information and submit that instead of completing the submittal form? No, you will have to list out each of the, you'll still have to have that financial report and highlight those costs because that's your proof of payment, but we will need you to put it on the form, what you're requesting and what it fits under for eligible expenses. This helps us with the backup documentation that is required by our grant policy. Carla, yes, benefits including benefits paid. So whatever it's being charged for those hourlies, we don't need to see that benefits calculation. But if somebody's working, their portion of their paycheck of where you're calculating the benefits that employee incurs. So if you have a city worker that's out there for 20 hours and that's half of their work for the week, you can include the benefits that cost within that, but we do not need to see that. But you do need to keep that information. We were just looking that up and I'll have to get I'll have to look into it further under our grant policies, how long you guys are supposed to keep those on file in your documents. Because there is a requirement that when you sign a grant that states how long you need to keep on file any maintenance or time cards that are associated with grant payments. What if your auditor doesn't break out airport share on their invoice? I will have to get back to you on that, Jackie. I'm not sure. Typically, when we've seen auditors, if they're auditing the airport expense, and maybe Jenny Bondman could answer that question as well. I know Jenny's not able to speak on it right now, but I'll have to see if there's a breakdown or we can talk to her and get that. And maybe you can email that question to us, Jackie, as well. But if you can break it out yourself and you know what the share is for the airport, you can write that down there on the airport is what Jenny just put on there. If they wrote the airport share on the invoice, it was accepted as long as you're showing that what the total cost was and then writing down what the share of the airport will accept that. Nicole asked, is the eligible expense training allow for more types of training or just specific type of training? The training has to be associated with the airport. So if you're going, like, for instance, to the airports conference, you can put that as the expense for the conference itself, you can get reimbursed on. Or if there's other trainings that you're attending for airport needs, whether it's a training that maybe one of our operation staffs put on, we can do that too. I'm not sure if previously there was other accepted ones, but that will have to be a question we can answer here later on. So Nicole, if you'll send that question as well, we can go more into detail. And Jenny can definitely answer that. Is there a dollar amount cap on the minor parts, supplies, and tools? We put our cleaning supplies there also. Does that mean it's ineligible, or does that fall under janitorial? The cleaning supplies, any minor parts, if you're picking them up at a store, like somebody goes and grabs it and brings it back, that is no longer eligible. We are looking if it's a larger expense where like if they include that in their janitorial, like if you're hiring somebody and have a service contract and they have those expenses within their janitorial amount, those are eligible because it's under a service contract. But if you're just going and buying a bottle of cleaner and bathroom cleaner and cleaning the toilet and having one person clean it, those are no longer eligible under there. Now parts, it has to be a part of we're looking for a service contract more. When we had recent internal audits and other stuff, we are trying to mitigate risk at the state. So they are looking to take away anything that's small, minor, that stuff that is a hard time for us to come and monitor and say, oh yeah, we can see now that you bought a cleaning supply that's there. So we're looking at larger things that has a better paper trail of, hey, this truck broke down, we brought it into fixed, here's the part that fixed it, boom, it's back up. That's more what we're able to easily be able to identify. So another example that Jenny just sent me, if your snow blowers was serviced and parts are listed on the invoice, that's eligible for reimbursement. Tina asked, does that apply to cleaning supplies for the terminal? Yes. If it's just bought off of a P card or anything like that, we are no longer listing those as eligible. And we are only doing service contracts and or larger pieces of parts for that. Joseph Miller also asked, will a copy of the PowerPoint be sent or printable? Yes. Jackie asked when the new form will be available. It'll be available soon here. We're hoping to have it up on the website by next week. Yes, Sheila, the website's under construction. We're hoping to have it up and with all these links to them by the end of next week. We have everything as PDFs as you saw, just trying to takes sometimes a couple days for our website people to upload those. And I'm not sure, Melissa put in, can I get the link, please, that link, please? All of our links will be on our website for most of these, including the AirTAP and our eligibility guidance is on there. Joseph asked what type of risk assessment. We are required every grant to do what's called a risk assessment. There's questions that we have cover that for past grants that we've given out, but there's also questions in regards to what the operations of your airport as well. And I forgot one thing. Jenny just reminded me, you also no longer need to submit expenses once you've received your total grant amount. So if you use all your money up in the first quarter, you no longer need to gather all the information for the remaining quarters and sending that in to us. You'll be done for the year. Nicole, we can make sure that for Bacchus that's been done. I can send out a list to all who haven't submitted it so that we can make sure that everybody's getting theirs done. And I think that's I know that Tina, looks like Tina's asking that, Nicole's asking that as well for the risk assessment. Amanda asks, in addition to clean supplies or softener salt paper products for bathrooms at the AD building eligible? No, those are no longer eligible. Any small supplies that are just brought in are no longer eligible for M&O expenses. We're trying to cover, and it looks like Confirmation Backus has sent in their risk assessment. So Nicole, you have got, your risk assessment is in. We're again with everything that's happening with grants with the state is reevaluating and trying to mitigate risk, and we are trying to cover the larger expenses like insurance, your maintenance expenses for plowing and mowing the runway and or grass around the runway and taxiways, and doing any type of upkeep on the building. So if you have it serviced, like if you have the air conditioner serviced at your airport, or, like something with the heater goes out and you have to call in somebody to service it, we can pay for those. Yes, Joe, make sure you like and subscribe to all AirTAP stuff. Michelle asked, can we still submit a report from our system instead of manually typing the information about each invoice? No, they are requiring us to have a form submit and show every expense that you're claiming so that we know the description, and then that sheet that you're submitting from your financial report is still proof that you paid it. This is a policy when we do financial reconciliations, we're requiring 2 pieces of information, and it's easier if you list it out so we know what eligibility is there, and that each item that you have fits into one of our eligibility categories. Jenny asks, so does the new form replace the individual sheets used previously and we're no longer calculating benefits into the requested amount? No, you can still calculate the hourly rate. So when you're looking at a person's pay, you can still calculate on your own that the benefits include that into the amount that you're sending. We just want to show that how many hours they worked and then what you're charging or what it costs for you to have that employee out at the airport to do that work. Yes, Amy. Amy asks, when will the new form be available to use, and should we wait for the new form to submit our Q1 reimbursements? Yes, we will have that ready. And again, we will extend the November 15th deadline. If you don't feel like you'll be able to meet that, you'll be able to submit that in a little later. Sarah asked, some of our expenses we purchase toward the end of the reporting period frequently do not get paid until after the quarterly deadline to submit the credit application. If they qualify for reimbursement, would we be required to request an extension each quarter? That's a good question. When I would have to get back and ask Jenny on that, if she would require you to submit later or have an extension to bring it in. I would guess my biggest question would be is how late is that? If you already know the expense and you maybe if does it take longer than a month and a half to pay those expenses, because we're trying to give a little extra time and maybe we adjust for the next biennium those submittal times. But if, for October, if you have for the first quarter, something that comes in at the end of September, and you don't get invoiced for it though until October, then it would fall under the different category. Are airport management contracts eligible under service contracts? I will have to get back on that one. And Jenny is saying on this first and second quarter could be combined because of the delay on our side. So you can submit first and second quarter together to help with the delay for these grants that have been coming out. And in the past regarding training, if the training attended benefits the employee who performed maintenance activities at the airport, they were eligible to submit, but they needed to state how it benefited the airport. So yes, so as long as the training attended benefited the airport, for an employee that works at the airport or does stuff at the airport, they just had to show like why that training, explain in it why that training benefited the airport, and that could be an eligible expense. Again, if it's not invoiced for an item until the filing quarter, once you receive the invoice. So if the invoice is dated and you're invoiced for it, like let's say the work was performed in September, but you're invoiced on October 10th, then you can submit that in the second quarter because it was invoiced on in the next quarter. I got an answer to Ben's question. Are airport management contracts eligible for under service contracts? No, on airport manager contract, unless they are performing maintenance activities, then you would have to show how you're logging those maintenance activities. So just managing the airport is not a maintenance and operations expense, eligible maintenance operation expense. But if that service contractor, that airport manager, whoever is doing like mowing or doing some type of maintenance and they have hours that they're working that, they would need to either have those hours tracked or bill those hours to the city and show that, hey, like part of their hours worked were for the maintenance of the airport. 1 second, I gotta plug in here quick. Yes, a copy of every invoice listed on the submittal form needs to be submitted, and that's why we want them in order that you put in on there. This is because, again, our grant policy states we need a proof of work or proof of cost with it, and those are the examples. Those are the examples that I kind of listed out where it's an invoice or a logbook or something that shows like how you came up with that rate or that amount. Yes, if you need a copy of the actual bill, like that's what our grant policies are now stating. You need an actual copy that shows who paid or like who you're paying and how they came up with that amount. For wages, will we now be required to list each employee and pay period on separate lines, or can total wages be entered on one line and provide a report from our system as documentation? I would say that might be a question for Jenny and how we want to make sure it's listed to easier for yourself. Lori, if you'll send that question in to Jenny. I think one of the things best is we're trying to, like, if you have for the month of January or however you pay your employee for the month of, let's say, July, they worked 40 hours at the airport on maintenance activities, you can list that on one line. If it makes it easier to list it on multiple lines because you have different forms that show how you calculated those hours, then it might be that, but it has to somehow match to show how you came up with the hours that they worked towards maintenance and operations activities at the airport. Sue says, so if we buy parts and fix the equipment, it isn't reimbursable, but if we take it in and have it fixed, it is. Yes, because the risk mitigation that the state is telling us for grants is they want something that shows that they can prove that that piece or whatever that that you purchased was for that piece of equipment. So if you have like a city worker that's doing those. I know there's a couple airports out there that their city has a person that does the work on it, and they can log and show like, hey, we replaced this part, here's how much we paid for it, and like there's a whole invoice of their city maintenance shop working on it, that will be eligible. But if you're just buying a part, like, hey, the light bulb needs to be changed at the AD building, you go buy a light bulb and change it, that will not be eligible. Lori Johnson asked about, which I think I answered, what are the requirements once the grant reimbursement has been maxed out? Are copies of invoices and proof of payment still required? No. Once you've maxed out your amount, you do not need to submit anything else. And yes, we want you to start using this form starting first quarter. If they already have the first quarter application done, do I need to wait until the form is ready? I would say yes. We're trying to make it a new start in this year, so I apologize that you were on the ball and got stuff done. But we're gonna try to get this, and again, we'll give you time to submit it and put it in there. Yes, I understand that the bathroom and cleaning supplies being an eligibility hurts smaller airports, but we're also trying to make sure that we're following our grant policies and mitigating risk as much as possible. While I understand buying toilet paper at the airports and small cleaning supplies, it was a way to reimburse. We're trying to cover the larger amounts that really cost those smaller airports, like your insurance for the airport, like any type of contract for mowing, or working on the on the property and doing those things. On the new form, we'll be able to have a second page for listing expenses. The new form should have the expenses list, each line you'll be able to list those expenses. Miranda, sorry if I say this wrong, calls her. I'm not sure, whatever airport it is, if you send myself or Jenny an airport, or if you can send me what airport you are at, we can get you about those. Is the year ending form still needed? Lynn, I'll answer that question. You can ask, since I'm actually here in St. Cloud, we can answer that question later. I'll get some more information from you. Can you clarify when additional attachments are needed to be included with the new form that we complete? Yes, you need two documents. You need one that shows how you came up with the cost, like the proof of work, whether that's an invoice, the hour, showing the logbook of when they done, a service contract showing how much they charged for that piece of work. You'll need that one piece of paper, and then you can either have a copy of the check right next to it, or if you have a financial report that you can highlight each cost expended and have that one report in there along with your invoices, that will work too. But we do need an invoice or something that shows how you came up with those costs. Laura asked, do we have to send timesheets for each person per payroll? Not if you have something else that shows how many hours they worked at the airport. So if you have a logbook or have some way else of showing like how you came up with the hours that they worked at the airport, then we can include that. How detailed should the payroll hour lines be? For example, all maintenance on one line, or does it need to be more detailed? I would say, and Miranda, you are Crookston. Sorry, Jenny's messaging me on the side here. We'll look into it. And I think I saw Crookston, but I'll double check. As Jenny has stated, one line for the month is okay for each employee performing maintenance at airport. Logbook would be very helpful in this situation. So if you have a logbook or something that tracks how many hours, whether it be mowing, snow plowing, maintenance work around the airport that an employee is doing, and you can show that they worked at the airport on airport activities for these hours, And you can track that. You can do it one line. So one per month is fine. Are runway lights reimbursable? Sheila, can you expand on that in an email to us? Are you asking like replacement of runway lights, or are you asking for like the utilities for a runway light? Yes, for payroll expenses included and payroll taxes. That would be a question for Jenny on that one. Please, Stephen, if you could submit that via question on an email, that would be great. Is water for the water cooler eligible? I have not seen that question before. If it's a water cooler that's available to the public sitting out and it's under a service contract, I would probably have to talk with Jenny on that to see if we've reimbursed that in the past. And we're running low on time here. Will there be a place to upload? Those will be large emails with all invoices. Yes. If yours is too large with all the invoices to reduce the PDF and it still doesn't go through, we will have a place that you can submit via a download box, and I will work with Jenny on that. But I think for runway lights, yes, if you're replacing a couple, but I know if you're replacing lights, please talk with our Navies department, because they might be able to get you a cheaper cost under our state amount to our state contract. Jenny Meyer asked if the city administrator for Walker says we have not done the risk assessment. How do we go about completing that? Is it every 2 years? Yes, we've been trying to do it every 2 years, just because running up with the biennium here. We will, Jenny, if you'll send me an email, Jenny Meyer, I will get you a link to that flat form or form stack. If maintenance contract is a set dollar amount, regardless of hours required to maintain the airport, a flat fee, that would depend on what that contract requires. And we can definitely talk on that one. Whether it's all just a maintenance contract, then yes, I think a flat fee would be fine, but please send that into Jenny. We're running low on time. I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question. The new form, it looks like, will be through our airport contract or our airport website, and we will send it out as well. Yes, replacement runway bulbs are reimbursable, but please talk to Casey Carlson, because he is our Navies guys. He's standing next to me here, actually. Because we can get some better pricing on some of those sometimes. So Walker actually has sent in their RA. So I think that is all the time. I got to run to another meeting, but if I didn't answer your question fully, please send myself and or Jenny Bonneman an email with all that information, and we'll get those answered right away. And I appreciate your patience. And again, for Q1, please know we're going to try to give you a little bit of extended time, and we'll try to get all answers questions, and you'll have plenty of time to submit those Q1 expenses.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arika. Everybody will be sending out. I have our comms team will be posting the webinar either today or tomorrow. We'll send that web recording out to you along with the new form and a couple other links. So keep your eyes out for that email. Thank you so much, everybody. If you have any questions, I think you know who to contact. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.